Hello again, everybody. Another video for you this week. In this one, I want to talk about Black nationalism within the context of civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. Um, so this is a phrase I think I've referenced a number of times if you've watched my other videos I put up. Um, Especially, I'm thinking about the one I called civil rights historical info, where I went through the stuff, the part from the Constitution and the Dred Scott case and the Jim Crow laws and stuff. So I just wanted to break down a couple of the kind of components that I think can help us define like what Black nationalism is, and maybe some of the ways that it's like different to and similar to the kind of more famous peaceful protest, like Christian church-based movement that we associate with Martin Luther King. Obviously, Black nationalism is more associated with people like Malcolm X. Obviously, a lot of other figures as well, but he'd probably be the most famous, right? So the first aspect of Black nationalism is what I talked about in that other video, which is their critique of America as a kind of structurally racist, kind of like incurably racist, as like a government structure, not like necessarily not every person in America necessarily, but more like the system of government, like the way we have our checks and balances and the Senate and all this stuff. Their position was that this could not be fixed. That under the system that we have, there was no way that you could actually achieve anything like racial equality, right? So one aspect of Black nationalism is a belief in kind of structural racism, I guess is what I would call it. And kind of going hand in hand with that, the belief that you need to have a totally new system, that you would have to completely overhaul the government and the economy as well, I think. And all these kind of structures that determine equality in society, that you need to, as Amiri Baraka says, kind of burn everything down, burn the policies, build a new world, right? So that's part of it. Some other parts. Racial solidarity is a big one. This was, I know that we think of this as like something obvious, maybe, that all the people of like an oppressed race or ethnicity would kind of try to stick together or whatever. But this is a very different way, I think, comes about kind of in the early 20th century, thinking about the idea that there's some kind of like shared identity among Black people. This was also the Black nationalists, I think, more so than other like strains of the civil rights movement, were very internationalist. Pan-African is a word that comes into use around when this is becoming popular, and it's just this idea that there's something like fundamental that connects all Black people, and that there is some kind of shared consciousness, shared identity that like requires everyone to stick together, right? So solidarity, coming together based on race, what was a big part of this. And some of the ways that this took place were in terms of like organizations that became big during the kind of from the 20s into the 50s and 60s. These organizations, things like the NAACP, or the organization led by somebody like Marcus Garvey, or even the various organizations that Martin Luther King was involved in, the Christian Southern Leadership Conference or something like that. So part of it was kind of having all of these like organizations that would look out for the interests of Black people in America specifically. They also kind of worked as like networking groups, right? Because other races had like, because racism didn't exist in the same way, even though other groups experienced racism. Other groups, I think, if you think about like Italians or Irish people or something, who definitely experienced a lot of racism when they were first immigrants, over the course of a couple of decades, they were kind of able to get themselves into higher positions and create like networking situations where they could get their people into better jobs, get more money, stuff like that. So these organizations, the NAACP and these other ones, kind of worked like networking also. It would help people to, get a foot in the door to try to move up in society and things like that. They also had this concept of uplift, right, that goes along with this, of like looking out for people based on like race and stuff like that. So that was a big part of it as well. And we see that in like the Amiri Baraka poem too, just the idea of everyone needs to unite, stick together, unify, all that kind of stuff. One other aspect of black nationalism, I would call this having like a uniquely black like point of view, an Afrocentric point of view, you might say. The black nationalists would say that like the way that we think about most things, like history, philosophy, the way that it's been taught, they would say that it's Eurocentric, that it's focused on Europe as if it were like the center of the world, right? To the exclusion of a place like Africa or South America. So something that they were interested in doing was trying to cultivate an Afrocentric point of view, right? They were very interested in learning like the history of ancient Africa, like learning. They would criticize like the focus on slavery when people study Black history or African history. They were interested in looking at the things that happened before that, and speaking for myself, I don't think school really ever taught me very much about that. So maybe there is something to their claim that we tend to be Eurocentric. Um, so yeah, in terms of like history and philosophy and stuff like that, they were very interested in trying to have like a different point of view, one that centered Africa and Black people, and taking that as kind of the default position to look at the world. Um, and I think part of this was creating like uniquely Black cultural forms, for instance, something like jazz or like rock and roll, like the earliest form of rock and roll, not like Elvis, but like like Muddy Waters or something like that. Um, so it was like I think we look at something like jazz or like rock and roll as these kind of like uniquely, and in this case even uniquely African American, right? Because that's I think specific to the American context too. So part of what they were doing is that they didn't want to write sonnets anymore. Why? Because sonnets were a relic of Europe. Like that's what Shakespeare wrote. So I think they had the feeling of like we need to like have a unique cultural expression because like we have a different culture. So why would we write in sonnets? That wasn't our thing. Our thing was whatever. Um, so I think when we look at like the form of its nation time or even Mississippi Goddam, um, I think we can see how they're influenced more by these kind of culturally black art forms. And yeah, I think that's all that I really want to say about it now. So I said structural racism, racial solidarity, and an Afrocentric point of view were all kind of some aspects of Black nationalism that I think we can see, playing out in some of these poems, and you can definitely see in like the Malcolm X essay. All right, I think that's it for this video. See you later.